Well, some dude copied Zaki's to remake Elden Ring in Unreal Engine 5. And funny enough, when I told about it to my absolutely gorgeous partner, her honest reaction was, bleh. Then I got acknowledged that she thinks that like the Zaki's vision is very unique, and because of that it's pretty, and in Unreal Engine, like the game gonna look very, very bad. So what we're gonna do is...
No, not very, very bad, but okay, it's the whole story about beauty, but I don't think we have time for this. Let's watch first.
Okay.
And in this video, I'll show you how I transformed this into this by breaking down FromSoft's approach to art direction and then using that approach with Unreal Engine 5.
Okay.
But first off, why? I mean, I'm essentially turning a game into a not as good game. Well, there's a few reasons. For one, I beat it, and I had to cope with the fact that my hyperfixation was over, until I realized nothing is ever over, because I can just make fan art. I don't need another DLC. I'll make my own DLC. On the other hand, the game looks amazing, and I genuinely wanted to try my best at making something as beautiful and vast as some of these areas. There are very few titles that match the quality of From Software's art direction, and having a better understanding of why Elden Ring stands out so much would help me improve in my own art.
I have to stop for a moment. This picture's actually looking gorgeous. And ironically, I remember at the release of Elden Ring, there were people, popular YouTubers, apparently looking for drama, that were just really upset at how Elden Ring looks like, saying that the graphics of the game looking dog shit, and overall, like, the game looking terrible, like super dated and shit. And whereas it's true that, like, some textures, if you're gonna look up close to them, like, they are not looking great. But I don't think that matter much in case if you can build such scenarios like we can see, like the Lurnian one in the bottom left for one, yeah, or like that blue flowers field, or like Saint Trina's ruins. Like it's looking amazing, honestly. I absolutely love it.
And finally, I wanted to see how much, if at all, a game like Elden Ring would improve with a more modern engine. There's no doubt that this game looks good, but then you zoom in and it's like,
brother,
yeah, that's what I said. Yeah,
what's that?
With that out of the way, let's take a look into how the art of Elden Ring was created. I initially thought the best resource would be the art book, but it mostly turned out to be a collection of concept art images without much insight into the creative process. What I really needed was to find the foundational elements of Elden Ring first. To do so, I turned to Miyazaki himself, diving into several interviews, not just about Elden Ring, but also his insights on how he approached creating the other Souls games as well. With that, I found a few key points. First off, Miyazaki is very hands-off when it comes to directing. He purposely gives vague ideas to his artists and lets them interpret what it means. It can get to the point where, and I quote, "I think the artist probably didn't know what I was talking about half the time."
Actually, I'm gonna tell you like a quick story from one of the Zaki's interviews. In Dark Souls 1, you have that NPC called Guinevere, like, you know, the one, I don't actually remember how she is called, like the big booba lady in Anor Londo after Ornstein Smough. What apparently happened is Michael gave directions of how she's supposed to look like to the artist. And then the artist gave her insanely huge boobs. And Michael looked at it and be like, holy shit, that's not what I wanted. But then he looked at how happy the artist was, and he just decided that he's going to approve that work just because he didn't want to break the heart of the 3D artist.
Which was not a great start into breaking down his thought process. But after more digging, I found that Miyazaki said that he imagined the Lands Between as a place that was very mysterious, ethereal, and invoked wonder. So I imagined that these were some of the ideas that the artist had to work with, and that I'll need to incorporate too. Somehow. Next, Miyazaki would go on to talk about how he would start creating his works. It didn't come from concept art or mood images, rather gameplay. This often meant laying out a map, which is why games like Dark Souls have such sprawling and interconnected layouts. But it also meant identifying the key interaction points, things like elevators, specific buildings, or even visual elements like the sun setting in Anor Londo were all considerations before establishing the other details. Lastly, Miyazaki said that one of the elements that makes Elden Ring stand out, compared to the other titles, is that while it shares the same grimdark fantasy look of the other Soulsborne games, there's often this bit of high fantasy that he described as moments of rest and beauty.
This is actually like the moment I entered this valley, I was so impressed. It was really magical, and I think this is my favorite moment of the DLC. Just regular entry to the area.
Miyazaki would go on to explain that this was intentional, as the game was meant to feel more inviting and freeing, to go along with the open world gameplay. Alright, now let's quickly recap and figure out a plan from our takeaways. From what we learned, the first order of business is to start with gameplay. So I quickly sketched up the layout for our game and used it as a guide to generate the landscape in Gaia. The lands between is very rarely flat, so I separated the map into 3 sections to give it the same depth and feel. As for the key moments, there's a few things I was inspired by. I wanted to add a bridge similar to the one on the mountaintops of the Giants, but I also wanted to add a distant castle, like the one in Liurnia. Elden Ring also has some of the prettiest skies, so as I created the map, I knew that I had to add some areas of height as a big reveal moment to overlook the vista. And after about 5 hours of trial and error, this was the result. It was pretty difficult to get right, especially procedurally, since Elden Ring has such a strange landscape, so I had to hand place a couple of cliffs, but I really like how jagged and steep the end result was. Now, we can finally hop into Unreal. I decided to use the game animation sample for the third-person character animations, which is free and looks really good, even when I'm actively trying to make it look bad. All that's left is to import our landscape and...
And there is some bugs.
Actually looks pretty good.
Yeah, it does actually.
Honestly, I was expecting something to go terribly wrong around this time, but no, everything sort of just worked. One thing I was really excited to use in Unreal was nanite displacement. All these rocks and sticks are just textures that I can paint in. It looks really good considering all this detail is without a single model. Yeah, okay, who cares? Let's make something actually a little cool.
Making the sky. Like my knowledge about video game production is so behind that when I look at the sky, I think of the skyboxes, like a static images with some additional animations. I'm pretty sure this is not how you do the skybox or how do you do the skies nowadays.
Wait, what? Really?
Huh?
Okay, I'm from your generation then.
Yeah, also think
Yes.
Yeah,
I had no idea they did it differently.
Yeah, I mean in the past, it definitely was like this. You had just a skybox and that's it.
Steelovsky indeed.
I think Elden Ring's sky is a super underrated part of the game. They genuinely look like something
It's
straight out
actually,
of...
Since when is it underrated?
I mean, I think the sky in this game is absolutely gorgeous, honestly. Honestly, it's probably just one of these moments when you want to make something sound good in the script, so you just write in whatever.
They also play a huge part in the color. There are a whole 2-hour-long video essays explaining the color theory of Elden Ring. And since the sky is such a large part of it, it also plays a big part into the mood and the story of the scene. To me, if Elden Ring is a canvas, then I believe the sky acts as an underpainting. Miyazaki is very careful when he selects his color palette, often only using analogous or complementary color schemes. So if I'm following his style, I'll need to be careful here deciding the color, because it will set the stage for my future color palette and mood. This was the result on my first pass on the sky. I decided I wanted to make an area based on the Cerulean coast, so this was the target I was shooting for. Okay. As you can see, I didn't quite hit the mark, so I had to try something else. That's when I found these textures by Valerian, which gave me some perfect shapes to play around with and hopefully make my sky look a little more dramatic. an hour later and it's looking a little better. We're definitely closer in color, and the shape of the clouds help to add to the ethereal tone, but it still needs a bit of work. Whatever, I'll just fix it later. The next step is to add our key moments. Elden Ring is really good at showing subtle glimpses of cool locations and buildings scattered throughout the horizon. It really adds to the mystery and sense of wonder that Miyazaki strived for. So I tried to do the same, placing buildings that lead the player's eye out into the distance towards the castle. And this was the end result. Obviously, these are just placeholder meshes, but I felt happy with the composition overall. Since we're referencing the Cerulean Coast, I popped in game to see how this flower field was made. It seems to be comprised of 3 foliage types: the glowing flowers, grass, and these things, I don't know. So I quickly got to work, remodeled some flowers, and threw them into Unreal. And I think they turned out pretty good. I did a lot of tweaking to the wind shader to have the gusts push them around, which I thought was an upgrade to Elden Ring's grass that sorta just wiggles back and forth. I painted
Just
in
like
a quick
wind, bro.
patch of grass as a test,
On our
and
screen.
here's the results. It's a bit blurry up close, but I really like how the moonlight hits the grass. But before I go in and paint grass everywhere, I first had to sculpt out the hills and paths. I'm gonna be honest, I didn't have a concrete plan going in, but I did know a couple of things. First, like Miyazaki said, keep it inviting. Nothing should feel too cramped, and all paths should at least invite you to explore it. Except for Caelid, I guess. Nothing about this area is inviting. Second, plan for gameplay. That means items, NPCs, enemies, etc. All of which I'm not actually adding to this project, but
Yeah,
I kept in mind
typical.
where I think some of those things should be. I also took Megascan rocks and placed them on the cliff sides. Though Elden Ring has some weird shapes with their rocks. There's often these jagged peaks and overhangs that wouldn't appear naturally in the real world. So I needed to take note and try to mimic some of that shape language. I also made some trees. Nothing special about them though, they're just trees. After putting it all together, it's starting to go well, but I was a bit worried because nothing really screamed Elden Ring to me. I couldn't really place my finger on why. Maybe the lack of fog? The ground color? Maybe more distant mountains? I was feeling discouraged. Why couldn't I figure it out despite all
Maybe
my
that
research?
random mesh that is fully white. in
I
there.
figured I won't really know until I have all my pieces in place, so I added anything outside of the buildings that might have an impact. This meant more fog, dramatic rocks, mountains, bushes, dirt, a lot of gravestones. I even recolored pretty much everything in hopes to better match the Cerulean Coast color palette. And after all that, this is what I was left with. Still not quite there. It was definitely way too bright in hindsight, but comparing side to side, I was feeling more confident. There just felt like it had more story and detail now. And comparing the color to the Cerulean Coast, I got closer to the nice gradient from the bright blue ground to the subtle purple sky. Now I can get to the fun stuff, buildings. This is where most of the storytelling will come in. There were some good mega scans that I could utilize, as well as this pack from Leartus Studios, but of course I needed to do some of the modeling myself. For example, these boat coffin things, which according to Zuli the Witch, house living tainted flesh that pollutes the fissures with putrescence. Ugh. Now, I'm no lore master, so I didn't know what kind of buildings would fit best here, so I tried to match the feel to Liurnia's academy. I felt like the Cerulean Coast and Liurnia had a similar magical and somber tone. I also kept in mind Elden Ring's tone. Did you ever notice how tiny and insignificant you feel playing the game? Everything around you is massive, so as I built the castles, I tried to make them feel as imposing as possible without
Actually, like quickly mentioning that, I think there is even a lore, or maybe like not exactly lore. I'm not sure how to actually call it, but I think there was some explanation related to the reason why pretty much every single enemy you meet in the game is actually bigger than you. Well, like not every single one technically, but most, yeah. And it is like I don't remember if this is exactly what was about. Maybe someone in the comments or here on chat like could explain it better. But I think it meant significance of NPC or character in the world presented. It probably is not true though when you think about it, because like Malenia is, for example, much smaller than Radan for one, yeah? Unless maybe it's because like she's diminishing in eyes, like because of the Scarlet Rod. Like I have no idea, honestly. It's to see the enemy better. Okay, like I mean, like aside from typical gameplay reasoning, I think there was like some sort of the reason why like the world presented is like this. But even like regular like, you know, Godric soldier is actually like bigger than you, yeah? Like literally every single character in the game, besides like other Tarnished and other NPCs, are like, well, yeah, they are like they are taller, simply taller.
Without it being too overbearing. I added a couple of details, such as the VFX and the player model, and with that, I was finally done.
These doors are pretty.
Okay, what do you think about it? Do you like it? First, do you like it?
Well, I have a huge problem with visuals of Unreal Engine overall. Like the lighting in Unreal Engine is something that I don't particularly enjoy, honestly. It's pretty, I agree. It just kind of, I don't know, maybe it's just because...
Soulless.
Yeah, soulless is something that I wanted to say. I just wanted to be more polite, but I guess like we're just gonna go with that, yeah. Maybe it's because I have seen so many Unreal Engine games already in the past, but I am just not a fan, honestly, of the way how the lighting actually goes.
Yes, and I think it's because you've seen so much of it to this point that it became mediocre.
Maybe.
It's like when we think about something being pretty, we search for patterns, we search for the average. Like beauty is mediocrity. This is actually a quote from Disco Elysium, by the way. I think it's better to gain extreme opinions because that makes you unique.
So even though technically, like for example, like graphics of the game can look less detailed and so on, but if it's going to look unique, in the eyes of the average Joe, it's gonna look more pretty.
More memorable.
Memorable, okay.
And like you see Elden Ring you can never mistake it for anything else. And when I look at this video, at this result, I think, oh, wow, it's very pretty indeed, but I can see this location in Lies of P, for example, which for me, Lies of P, as much as I love this game, is very generic Unreal Engine.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's built on Unreal Engine 4. Technically, this one's supposed to be prettier because of the additional, like, things that it has. But yeah, like...
It's too smooth.
Okay.
It lacks Soul's harshness.
Like the animations, the way how the cape kind of just floats around, it's pretty cool. But yeah,
I was going to say it's ugly.
You don't like it actually?
Yeah, I don't like it at all.
I like how it doesn't clip. If that would be Elden Ring, wait, maybe it actually does clip. Actually, I'm not sure. I wanted to complain that like in Elden Ring, just all the capes like just clipping through and stuff.
It's too hyper realistic. I don't like it.
Okay.
It's pretty. It's nice. It's not Elden Ring though.
I would play this game. Like, I mean, like, the game that would have this type of visuals. It's just that, yeah, it just...
Play Lies of P.
Yeah, I guess. Oh, that's actually a pretty cool shot. Although, like, you don't really see the stairs. Yeah, they kind of like...
You have a giant castle and a dirt road that leads to it. It doesn't make sense.
Well, like most things in video games. Honestly.
Overall, I was really happy to see everything come together. I still believe I never really matched Elden Ring's art style, but I felt that I improved while trying my best to emulate it. And if you're curious to see how much of Elden Ring I made, here it is. A couple hundred hours netted me roughly 1/20th of Elden Ring, and that doesn't even account for the DLC, the underground area, or the fact that only about this much is actually made for the player to walk around in. So to answer the question, can I improve Elden Ring with a better engine? Maybe if I was Miyazaki. Elden Ring is a game that really plays into its strengths. And what I think Unreal Engine did was provide enough performance to really enhance the close-up shots and texture fidelity. It's nice, but not core to the vast open that is Elden Ring. It's why I feel like the cramped spaces of the Demon Souls remake benefited much more with the new engine. But let me know what you think, and let me know what I should make next. With Arcane Season 2 coming out soon, I might try to make an FPS game in that style. Or maybe I'll make the Bloodborne remaster like it rightfully deserves. Thank you so much for watching. I'll add all the resources I used in the description. Also a special thanks to Tipo. I was largely inspired by his videos, so please check him out too. Alright, bye!
I mean, I enjoyed the video. It was fun to watch. It's just, yeah, like, I just don't like Unreal Engine visually.
And to make it clear, the bro made amazing job.
Absolutely.
And he emulated the atmosphere as much
as he could.
Yes, and it is amazing, but it's Unreal Engine at the end of the day.
Yep. Alright. Good video, though.